Welcome to the Travel Squad podcast, where adventure meets inspiration. We're your hosts. I'm Brittany.
I'm Kim.
And I'm Jamal. Together we explore international destinations, hike epic national parks, and share unforgettable travel experiences with you, one passport stamp at a time.
Our mission is to inspire you to travel by showing you how you can make it work no matter your budget, schedule, or experience level.
We bring you along so that you can laugh, get excited, and start planning your own trip.
So grab your ticket and your passport.
And don't forget your travel insurance.
And get ready to embark on a new adventure with us around the globe.
Hello, Renee. Thank you for coming on to the Travel Squad podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
I know we've been talking about this interview for several months, and it's a long time coming now, so we're really excited to have you. You are a listener of the show, so you know for all of our guests, we like to start our interviews by going way back. So for you, since we're going to be talking about slow travel today, we want to hear what was one of your first slow travel experiences that made you fall in love with this style of travel?
Yeah, sure. So I have been traveling to Europe for over 35 years, and I think I've been practicing slow travel before the term actually was invented. And it wasn't until it's really just become a trend that I've had this, aha moment of, hey, that's the way I like to travel. I've really always been one and I think it's kind of just maybe my independence streak. I want to avoid those kind of touristy places. I kind of want to be seen as a local, especially when I'm in Europe, just to be able to, go to places that the locals kind of go to and, not really have an itinerary, but just kind of walk and explore. And that's just how I've always really traveled. So once I've known about it and once I have traveled more and more to Europe, I've, developed it and honed it. And so it's not like I immediately kind of fell into traveling like a slow traveler, but it's been something that I've been practicing and still continue to practice every trip I go on.
We're not necessarily slow travelers. It depends on really the location, of course, but we all work full-time jobs. So when we're able to take the time off from work, and we're very fortunate that we can take a good amount of time off throughout the year, a lot of times we really have to be rushed, right? And see if we're going somewhere, see it all really fast or a lot of the main highlights. So in your definition, what would you say is slow travel, and why do you encourage more people to travel that way?
Yeah, so I think slow travel is definitely about the pace. It is a slower pace, but I think it's much more than that. And I really kind of see it as an extension of the slow living movement that's happening. And that's, really just kind of being mindful about what you enjoy about your life and kind of finding that joy in those kind of simple everyday moments. So when you translate that to slow travel, to me, it's about traveling with purpose, choosing quality over quantity, being intentional about the way that you spend your time. So even if you are on a trip for a weekend, a couple of days in a destination, you can still practice slow travel. I really feel it's about, knowing yourself and what you really enjoy and honing in on that. And so prioritize what your interests are and what your passions are. And really, that's where you want to kind of focus your time in that destination that you're traveling to. But of course, it is about the pace, right? It's about lingering and never kind of rushing anything. And so whether that's sitting in a cafe, walking down a street or visiting a museum, I always say it's a slow-footed pace. You're just going a little bit more slowly, and it's not necessarily the length of time that you're in a destination. I think that is one of the myths that needs to be busted, that people can, of course, have full-time jobs and just be traveling, a couple of times a year, a couple of weeks a year, and you still can have that slow travel experience. And it's not necessarily about living that nomadic lifestyle where you're living in a destination for a length of time. You can still kind of practice those characteristics of slow travel on your week trip to Europe.
Well, thank you for clarifying that, because you do put it into good perspective. You can even slow travel in a busy city like New York City. It's just about taking it a little bit slower, noticing more as you're walking around, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the trends that are happening in travel right now are a little bit of kind of blending things together. People are really talking about hidden gems and finding places that are under the radar that aren't necessarily where all the tourists are going. And they view that as slow travel. And of course, an element of that is slow travel, but you can practice slow travel in the busiest cities like New York or in Europe, all the capital cities. Because it's a mindset. It's how you approach your day. And you can do it from a tourist perspective, or you can be the tourist in your own city, practicing slow travel. I view it as a much kind of broader definition because I really feel it's a mindset, and there's elements of that slow travel that you can put into practice.
A random question. I know you're saying it's a mindset, and I don't disagree with you, but I know you are a European expert, and we're going to talk more specifically about Paris here coming up. But I just want to preface it with that then. Say you're going to Paris, and this is somebody who's going the first time in their life, probably not going to be there more than 3 days. And this is, again, maybe the only time they'll ever go. How do you tell somebody who wants to really see it all to like slow down? And this is honestly the best way to experience a city is in this slow mindset versus seeing all of the tourist attractions, going to the main things. How do you get in that mindset?
Yeah, I think it's about balance, right? Finding the healthy balance. So if you've never practiced slow travel and you want to start to introduce it, it's going to be baby steps, right? So you're going to think about what makes sense for you. But to your immediate question about your first time traveler, you're going to Paris, and obviously there are some big landmarks that you want to see and experience. I would say experience them because you want to experience them. So if you really love museums, then you're going to love the Louvre. If you're not into going to museums, then you're going to leave probably feeling very underwhelmed and stressed, and it's not going to be a great use of your time. So how you could offset that is it's not like you don't want to go to the Louvre. You could go to the Louvre and see its exterior. There's nothing wrong with, going there and admiring the architecture that's been there for centuries and seeing, it against the modern glass pyramids, that kind of typical picture that everyone has seen in their mind about Paris. And so you can explore that on the exterior if you don't love museums and still be able to say, hey, I've seen the Louvre, I've seen the surroundings, I've seen people who have been there, and they're coming and going of the Parisians walking through that big square. It's also very close to Jardin de Tuileries. So, you would go over there and walk. So I think it's not like you're saying no to the landmarks, the important landmarks of every city. It just might be that you offset that with, if you have 3 days, maybe you're only going to 3 things, and the rest of the time is, just walking the streets, walking along the Seine, or, visiting a neighborhood and just kind of walking and seeing what you can kind of explore and find on your own.
That really resonates with me because I'm not a museum person, but when you hear about Paris, everyone either says you have to go to the Louvre or they'll ask you, did you go to the Louvre? But I've heard a lot of feedback from people who say, and what is the painting there that's the famous one?
Mona Lisa.
The Mona Lisa. Almost everyone says it's so small. It's so underwhelming.
Yeah.
You think it's underwhelming, and it actually is because, Brittany and I have been to Paris, but I will say this, they keep you about 10 feet back. They have a brass rail. It's behind glass. But then there are like 5 other Michelangelos in the same room that I think are substantially better that nobody's like looking at. But, to your point, Kim, like, yeah, you don't necessarily like museums. If that's not going to be your thing, I resonate with what you're saying too. Like, Renee, go see the site, walk, stroll. You don't have to do those things, but some of those iconic things, I guess, is what people say like, oh, you need to do, but are you doing it because you feel forced? So it's a lot of putting it into perspective of what you mentioned and alluded to earlier, Renee, of what you want to do and get out of it.
Yeah. And going back to the mindset, part of slow travel and that mindset is not only knowing yourself, but being unapologetically true to yourself. And so just going back to that example, if you know that you don't like museums, you should be okay with saying, I don't want to spend my time there.
Yeah, we just booked an Egypt trip Jamal and Britt added on this museum excursion, and I said, you know what? I'm not a museum person. I'm not going to do this one.
And that's amazing. So that to me that's the mindset of a slow traveler, to be able to say, you know what, I know that there's this fear of missing out. I know that there's this social media pressure, or there's, pressure by your friends or your family, your colleagues, whomever who's gone there, who says you have to do these things. And that's great if they have that opinion. But if you really know yourself and know what you truly love to do, that's the quality over quantity. You think about, where do I want to spend the most amount of my time, and do that, because those will be the memories that you have. If you experience things that you think are kind of underwhelming, then I think that ruins the overall experience that you have of that city. And I feel like, when you mention Paris, there's this real divide with people. People either love the city or they hate the city. And to me, I feel like it's because those who hate the city, it's because they went and did all the things that you were expected to go and do in Paris. And the real essence of Paris is not doing any of those things. It's doing really nothing. It's really just strolling around the city and being able to, just soak it all in, right? To go to a cafe. It's just about experiencing life. And again, that kind of goes back to that slow traveler mindset. It is a great city for slow travelers.
When I think of Paris, I think of just a picnic with a baguette and cheese underneath the Eiffel Tower.
With a bottle of wine.
Ooh, yes.
And I was even going to say that earlier, when we were talking about my question about somebody only a few days in Paris, only going to be there once, what to do. And then you went straight to the Louvre. I was even thinking, well, a lot of people want to go into the Eiffel Tower, but half the fun of it is actually just being on the promenade. You can go into any store, buy some bread, cheese, and wine in that exact moment and just sit and do that, versus standing in line for 2 hours just to get in the elevator to go up the Eiffel Tower. You'll spend maybe 30 minutes, or of course, if you want to take time to enjoy it, spend longer. But that picnic is more so just that slow travel mindset versus, well, let me go to the top and get the view from the top.
Yeah, and there's other parts of the city that you can see the Eiffel Tower from. So for those who haven't been, there's many areas. Walking along the right bank of the Seine, you can see the Eiffel Tower. There's some great streets in the 7th arrondissement, which is where the Eiffel Tower is, that you can see. You turn the corner and there it is amongst all the buildings, and it's such a phenomenal view. The example of, would you go to the Eiffel Tower? To me, it's a choice. Do you go up, just like Jamal said, take the time, go up, and you see the view? The view that you're not getting, though, is of the Eiffel Tower. And so there are many places in the city that you can go up an elevated view and see the city and see the Eiffel Tower. And so that might be a better kind of experience. Or is it just kind of going near and around and seeing the Eiffel Tower as you're also then kind of soaking in the city?
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Since you're new to H&R Block, we'll look at your returns from the last 3 years for any money your last guy might have missed, for free.
I could get money back from last year?
You could. We'll find any mistakes.
Could have really used that 2 years ago when I dated that mistake for 5 months.
Don't leave money on the table. Switch to H&R Block and get a free second look review. Second look is included at no additional cost with the purchase of tax preparation. Results vary. All tax situations are different. Fees apply if you have us file an amended return.
I get so many headaches every month.
It could be chronic migraine, 15 or more headache days a month, each lasting 4 hours or more.
Botox, onabotulinum toxin A, prevents headaches in adults with chronic migraine. It's not for those who have 14 or fewer headache days a month. Prescription Botox is injected by your doctor. Effects of Botox may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away, as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness can be signs of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Side effects may include allergic reactions, neck and injection site pain, fatigue, and headache. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Don't receive Botox if there's a skin infection. Tell your doctor your medical history, muscle or nerve conditions, including ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects.
Why wait? Ask your doctor. Visit BotoxChronicMigraine.com or call 1-800-44-BOTOX to learn more.
I have to imagine slow travel in this way is really good for stress relief and adrenal fatigue and all of those things, because we always say we need a vacation from our vacation. And we are the type of people on a lot of trips, not everyone anymore, but we have a schedule, we have a timeline, we have 30 minutes at this spot and then 30-minute drive, and it's exhausting a little bit. And if a wrench comes into your plans, it can really stress you out. Can you talk about that, how it is actually so good for stress relief, or do you agree?
Absolutely agree. So I think that, slow travel is not meant to be stressful, and it's meant to be extremely flexible. So if you have intentions on going to see something and it happens to be closed, or, you don't get tickets or something like that, it's having that kind of mindset of, oh, well, it wasn't meant to be. I'm not going to see it on this trip. Maybe I'll return again, but what else can I explore and what else can I do? So it really is that kind of, because you're not having a jam-packed itinerary, it's not rushed. You're doing what you love. It's more of putting yourself first. It's kind of self-care travel, if you want to think about it from that perspective. And it's also memories that you're going to probably remember. So if you think about that kind of hurried tourist who goes from landmark to landmark to landmark, well, you come back and all of those kind of places just kind of are a blur. Whereas if you decide to, okay, I'm only going to stay maybe and do 2 destinations in my week-long trip or 2-week trip, and I'm really going to, spend my time there, and it is going to be things that I love to do, then you are having a chance to kind of unwind, reflect, throughout your day. Maybe you're sitting in a park and, maybe you're journaling, or, you're just really kind of living in the moment and you're being present. And just those kind of things are stress relievers, and it helps from that kind of mental health perspective. You are coming back feeling refreshed, and you have those kind of memories that you might not have gotten otherwise.
So I'm curious, of course, you just mentioned that slow travel should not be stressful, and of course, you should be flexible. So when you're actually going somewhere, of course, do you create your own itinerary of what you want to do, but just keep it to a bare minimum? Or do you land in a place with a general idea and just kind of go with the flow?
You're asking me personally, not giving advice. Okay.
Well, both.
Well, yes, both, but you're right. It was a personal question.
Yeah, I would say that when I was just a traveler, I had zero schedule.
Wow.
I feel those were probably the good old days, where I would just show up at a destination, not do any research. I'd walk a little bit. I would stop at my first kind of restaurant, and I'd ask my server, and I'd say, hey, you have a day off tomorrow. Where are you going? Where are you eating in the city?
So you're having a lot more conversations with locals too.
Yes, but and so I would let them plan my trip, and I would literally go day by day from, what I would pick up from locals, or sitting at a park bench, and I would turn to the person who's sitting with me and I would say, what are you doing afterwards? What did you do this morning? Where would you recommend that I go? So that was how I used to travel. And that's that element of slow travel, right? Just really connecting with the community, talking to locals, getting that authentic kind of travel experience. Now that travel is my full-time business, it's a little bit different, because I need to visit a destination and go to everything and experience everything, because I need to be able to write about it. And it has its advantages and also its disadvantages. But the advantages would be it's taking me to places that I probably wouldn't normally have visited on my own. They wouldn't have been on my radar. But I'm also then putting it into kind of perspective of a normal traveler does probably want to go and see those landmarks, right? So I do want to have that experience and be able to create itineraries for people and try and infuse slow travel in little pieces in their day. And so how I get around that is, one, I revisit destinations over and over again. I'm not a traveler. If you ask me how many countries I've been to, it's not very many, but I've been to Paris 11 times.
Wow.
I've been to Italy 3 times. I've been to Germany 6 times, 7 times. So I revisit countries and travel more deeply. And that's kind of an element of slow travel. But it allows me to be able to see and experience the full destination so that I can be able to provide that well-rounded advice about, is it worth your time? Because I have been able to do that. I think that another part for me is that I love photography. And so if people do love photography and they love to, take pictures or whatever, a good way to be able to plan your itinerary is maybe think about, I want to go to 2 landmarks in a day. And one is in one part of the city and the other is in the other side of the city. And my whole goal that day is to go from A to B, but I've got the full day. And so, you go and visit that landmark that you want to go and see. And then the journey is, going from that landmark to the next landmark and walking slowly with your camera, and you kind of try and see the city through your lens of your camera, which means you have to slow down, you have to look at details, you have to peek around a corner. When a door opens, you kind of look in the corridor and see, is that a great shot or something like that. So there's ways, I think, of being able to still incorporate that slow travel when my pace is to still try and go and see everything to be able to write about it.
I'm actually so glad Brittany's not on this episode because everything you're describing, she needs to hear this one actually once it goes live, because she walks fast, she plans a booked up itinerary. Me and Jamal have slowly been encouraging and transitioning to a little bit more slow travel, kind of dipping our toes there. And Brittany's kind of getting there too, but wow, this is totally the opposite.
I don't disagree with you, Kim, but it's one of those things, different travel styles, right? A lot of people like to see everything too, but you're right. Brittany's getting there, but it's kind of that double-edged sword that you just even mentioned yourself, Renee. Now that you're actually making this your business, you need to actually put other stuff of what most tourists want to see. And I also feel like that's with us when we go places where every place that we go, we have a podcast episode. People want to hear about this, that, and the other, because that's probably where they're going to go. So I think a lot of it is really finding that fine balance of taking it slow, experiencing a city as a local if you can, but also seeing what you want to see. So as we get older and travel more, it's that fine balance that I think we're all fine tuning.
I feel like this leans into solo travel a bit, Renee. Would you say slow travel and solo travel are always together, or can couples do this, groups do this?
I think it depends on, because it is, just as Jamal had mentioned, it is a style. And so there are many different styles to travel. And so you need to find the one that resonates with you. This is one that resonates with me, but I would never pass judgment on anybody else who didn't like this style, right? To me, it's about following what makes you happy, right? It's going back to those principles of what fills your cup, where do you find the joy? And so if this is a style that, you find joy in, then for sure, adapt it. I do travel with my husband, and he is a slower paced traveler. And then I'm a solo traveler for probably 90% of it, because I do go for business and I don't often travel with someone else. And so I think it is, if you are a solo person and this is something that you want to do, it's great. If you're traveling with other people who don't believe that this is the style that matches them, then there could be a little bit of friction there, right? So it might be a good way to introduce it, because you could say, hey, the morning is yours, the afternoon is mine. Right. So you can blend the two styles together. You get a balance. I hosted a slow travel retreat in Tuscany in September. Ooh, Tuscany, the great slow travel destination to go to. And so it was introducing 14 people to that style that had not really done it before. And many of them had used that retreat as a launching off point where they then had holidays planned afterwards. And they remarked afterwards when they got home finally, and they had said, you know what? I see the difference in slow travel. I loved that week in Tuscany because you forced us to slow down. You didn't put too much on our itinerary. And then when I went to this destination with my friends or with my partner, we were go, 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 go. And I didn't actually get time to experience it the same way that I experienced Tuscany with your itinerary.
Absolutely. And Renee, the business Dream Plan Experience, is this what people can find when they go to the website? Other slow travel retreats that they can join?
Yeah, so I had the one that I offered in Tuscany in September, and I don't have another one planned. I would probably do the same one in Tuscany because I developed some really good community contacts and it's a great itinerary. And so I do want to do it again. It's just trying to find the time to
Yeah. Well, when you do it, I'm very interested because I did Florence when I went to Italy, but I didn't get to do a lot of like the castles and wine, and I would love to do. I think slow travel is perfect for that destination.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll connect with you.
Please do. Thank you.
I kind of want to shift the conversation a little bit more towards Paris now. I mean, I know we talked about it a little bit earlier, but I really want to focus on Paris because a lot of our listeners and squatties, they say to us all the time, like, why don't we have a Paris episode? But again, only Brittany and I have been there in 2015, so a really long time. And of course, we don't feel like we would be able to give good content on it, which we know you can. So kind of keeping with the theme of slow travel and with the analogy Kim mentioned earlier about, New York being a bustling city, but even you could take it slow. How does slow travel in Paris differ from the typical tourist experience? I know you said if there's point A, point B, walk between, experience it that way, but give us another great example of the slow travel experience in Paris and how it differs than the normal tourist.
Yeah, so I would say that Paris is a great city to practice slow travel in because the Parisians have perfected the art of slow travel or slow living. A really good tip, you had mentioned that Brittany is, a fast walker and jams your itinerary. A tip I would have and something that I've practiced because I am a fast walker is walk behind a Parisian. And it forces you to not pass them on the sidewalk and to follow their pace. And when you watch a Parisian walk, they take their time, they'll pause, look in a store window, they'll stop by a bookshop, like they'll meet someone on the street, they'll sit down at a bench in a square. It's really a great way to kind of, practice that slow-footed walking. But they have a term in French, which is called a flâneur. And a flâneur means that you're a wanderer, that you have no real purpose to go anywhere, but you observe what is around you. And this is why I say Paris is a great city to slow travel in because Parisians have perfected that art of being a flâneur. They really do. They walk slowly. They enjoy going and visiting a park. They walk into a little shop. They're great lingerers, right? Whether it's in a cafe or over a meal. And so I also think it's a great city to practice slow travel in because it's a city where you still see Parisians live. So in contrast, if you were to go to Venice, which is a beautiful city, it's very unique, but there are no locals there. So it kind of doesn't feel like an authentic experience when you go to Venice because you're not seeing any locals. It's like the Disneyland of Italy because it's a city built for tourism. But Paris, Parisians still live in the most touristy areas of the city. You still see them walking and they still go to the landmarks. They might not go to the Eiffel Tower, but you'll still see them walking very slowly in the Louvre or at some of the best museums there. You'll see them in the gardens, sitting with a friend or reading a book. So they really do live in their city. There's not areas of the city that they kind of avoid because they feel it's too touristy. And so I feel that it's one of the best cities to kind of practice slow living because you get to see the people who live there practice it themselves.
That's beautiful.
Campfire season's back, and that means s'mores. But when you're at home treating yourself, take them over ice with Dunkin' S'mores Cold Brew Concentrate. And suddenly you're always treating yourself. The home with Dunkin' is where you want to be. Click or tap the banner to shop now.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
So good, so good, so good.
Just in and so good. Thousands of spring finds up to 70% off are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. And that means thousands of fresh reasons to rack.
How did I not know Rack has Adidas?
Vince, Calvin Klein, Rag & Bone?
Obsessed. Why do we rack? For the hottest deals.
Save on Madewell, Kate Spade New York, Sam Edelman, Joe's, and more. Great brands, great prices. That's why you rack.
I think one of the things I really liked most about Paris when I was there, and I wish I took more time to do that, is just really sitting down at any cafe or maybe a cafe that overlooks a famous area and just enjoying watching life pass by. Because I love when I travel to like people watch, and I feel like Paris is a great place too to just go enjoy, have that coffee, get a drink, do anything. If somebody's a smoker, not advocating for it, but sit on a bench and have a smoke or do whatever you'd like, just really enjoy the pace.
Yeah, it's one of the cities that you still can sit in a cafe from 9 o'clock and be there the entire day. And you can have a coffee, and then it can, move into a lunch, and then it could, move into happy hour and have a glass of wine. So like you really aren't rushed out of any place in Paris. There's no like turning over of tables when you're in a cafe or a bistro. You get to be able to really enjoy that time. And it's great, just as you said, for people watching. And that's part of slow travel, is just observing life, just watching it go by. And it's a great way to watch the local Parisians, how they kind of go about their day. And that could be in a park if you don't want to sit, or along the Seine. I love walking up the Seine and then back down the Seine. And, there's just something to being able to walk. You have the river kind of rustling along with you. You watch the boats kind of go by. But as you're walking through, you get to admire the landmarks or the architecture as you're moving through the city and through each of the arrondissements as you're walking.
Feels like a stronger tie to community too. I've been on this community kick lately. I was just in Iceland and they were talking about how the people who live there are very happy, and community is such a big part of it. And sounds like in Paris too, if you're spending all day in a cafe, you probably build relationships with people who work there or who are also there.
Yeah, that's a really good thing that you're raising, Kimberly, in terms of the community aspect. One of the things about the culture of French people, particularly Parisians, is that they are very loyal to their neighborhood. And so if they live in the 6th arrondissement or near Saint-Germain, they only will go to that cheesemaker that's on their street, or the flower shop, or the boulangerie, the butcher. Like they really do. It is really a community feel, because those are the places that they will stay. I have an example of that. When I go, I stay for long periods of time, and I always am in a rented apartment, and it usually takes me about a day or 2 days, where then when I leave for the day, I will have, the shopkeepers out on the street who will now recognize me and who will say, bonjour, madame, bonjour. Like they will like greet me and give me a greeting because, I've seen her now come and go, and she, is part of our community. And so I love that about what you had said about Iceland, where they have this sense of feeling happy, and there's that real connection of community and feeling loyal to the shopkeepers of where Parisians live, and sticking to them, and that loyalty to their local shops that are there.
I know you mentioned it was 11 times, correct, that you said you've been to Paris, and I'm sure a lot of those times, for an extended period of time. But if somebody is going to Paris for their first time, how much time would you recommend that they spend there. And I'm curious from a perspective of as a slow traveler, which I'm sure you could probably say weeks upon weeks and just enjoying it. But realistically, as a slow traveler or somebody who's either go, 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 or definitely moves a little fast, I'm kind of curious on both perspectives.
Yeah, I think that for a first-time traveler, 3 to 4 full days is a good number. Most people go to Paris and they use it as their launching point to go either to other regions in France, or maybe they're taking the train to London or to Brussels or to Berlin. And so I think for your first time, it probably is a good idea to maybe just go for 3 to 4 days so it's not an overwhelming city. And maybe your first time to Europe, I should also preface that. If it's your first time going to Europe too, you might not want to spend any longer there, because it's just kind of a neat way to package your itinerary of a short stay there, especially if you don't live in a big city, maybe in the US. And so, yeah, I would say, 3 to 4 days would be great. And you can do a lot in 3 to 4 days. The beauty about Paris is it really is a small, compact city, even though it's a big city. And it's easy to walk into to get around, even if you wanted to use the metro, but, ideally to walk. It's a city that, it's surprisingly one that you can be able to kind of cover off in 3 to 4 days if you don't have that length of time of staying any longer.
So Renee, I have a personal question. I am going to the south of France in the end of May, and it's only going to be for a few days. I'm kind of adding on to a Mykonos trip that I have, and I'm dabbling with the idea of flying into Paris and then taking the train to the south of France. I would only have probably like 8 hours, get in around 11 a.m. and take the night train into south of France. I'm thinking probably the only thing I really would want to do would be that picnic underneath the Eiffel Tower. Would you say with that short amount of time, go for it, still do it? Or what's your take on that? Is it worth it?
I would do it just because I love the city.
Yeah.
But so context, you've not been to Paris before, and you're flying overnight, so you have jet lag.
I have jet lag, but it doesn't scare me.
Okay. So, yeah, absolutely. Why not? I've gone to Paris for the day. And so I've done it from when I was, spending 2 weeks in Belgium. And I'm like, hey, I'm going to hop on the train and I'm going to go to Paris for the day. So I feel like you could go and just go and have that one experience if you want to have it. Or you could just, pick one of the neighborhoods. I'd say Le Marais, if you were to do that, it's a great neighborhood to just kind of go and spend the day. I would probably say maybe stay close to the train station that you need to get to in that evening. And I would recommend just, being close to there, picking a great restaurant and just exploring that neighborhood, and then hop on the train and go down.
You mentioning a restaurant has prompted me to think of something. Of course, Paris is known to be an amazing culinary city. How do you approach food and dining in Paris? Are there any hidden gems, restaurant-wise, that the locals go to that wouldn't be on a tourist spot that you could name drop, and any favorite local markets that you like to go to?
Yeah, there are great restaurants in every arrondissement of Paris. So there's 20 arrondissements or districts of Paris. And unfortunately, they're changing all the time. But there are some Paris institutions that have been around for centuries that, yes, they're absolutely touristy, but I love to go to them because they've got a really good atmosphere and vibe to them. Those are the coffee shops where, famous people have gone and sat and, had historical debates over. They're in Saint-Germain. There's Le Deux Margot. There's Café Fleur. Le Procoupe is the oldest restaurant in Paris. Lip is the Parisian institution to go to. Le Train Bleu is in the train station. I say whatever train station you're at, maybe I'll send you a note, Kimberly. You might want to go and do that one. It's absolutely beautiful and stunning. So I think, those kind of Parisian institutions, there's nothing wrong with going for them and knowing that it's the ambiance that you're going for and not necessarily the food. You're not going to walk away and say that was the best meal I had. But sometimes the vibe overcompensates for the food and the experience. It's about the experience.
Definitely.
If you're a foodie, I would say go to the 10th arrondissement. So that's a very kind of trendy area in Paris. There's lots of fusion type restaurants that they have there. You won't necessarily find the kind of traditional Parisian bistro or brassiere. And they've got great cocktail bars. So it's really a good night scene as well as a food scene. And market streets, I always go to market streets, and there's a few of them. So there's Rue Claire. So if you were ever to do the picnic idea under the Eiffel Tower, you want to walk to Rue Claire, which is a 5-minute walk from the Eiffel Tower. And that's a market street where you can get everything in one stop. So they have you've got your wine shop, you've got your boulangerie, you've got your cheese shop, you've got, your fruit market stands. So you pick up a little bit of everything and then you kind of make yourself have a picnic. And I have done that actually with my husband. That was kind of our our tradition to kind of do. And then there's also Rue des Mars, it's a long street that actually starts in Montmartre at the top of the hill, and you go all the way down to the 9th arrondissement. And I love that street because you really do see the locals kind of pop back and forth into their favorite shops. And it's got a mix of, there's antiques on that street and other little shops, but it's a great kind of a foodie street that you see there. Rue de Bac is another great neighborhood kind of food market street. And there's lots of them. I love going there, whether it's market day or not market day. You really do get to kind of pop in, pick yourself up, a chunk of cheese and your baguette. Maybe that's what you're having as you unwind from your day, or maybe you're having that to tide you over before your late night dinner.
Lots of good options.
I know. I was going to say you listed a plethora of places, and that's just off the top of your head. And I know you've experienced countless more, but apparently if those are the ones that came to the forefront, those are the places that definitely need to be on anybody's list.
Hi, this is Debbie, your Blinds.com design consultant.
Oh, wow. A real person.
Yep, I am here to help you with everything from selecting the perfect window treatments
Well, I've got a complicated project.
Oh, not a problem. I can even schedule a professional measure and install. We can also send you samples, fast and free.
I just might have to do more.
Oh, okay.
So the first room we're looking at is for guests.
Shop Blinds.com now and get up to 40% off with minimum purchase. Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Acura's all-new ADX, a compact SUV that isn't just built for one thing. It's precision crafted for everything. To escape the grind with available all-wheel drive. To go with your flow with available Google built-in.
Hey Google, turn it up.
Okay, turning up the volume. And crafted to be heard with an available Bang & Olufsen premium sound system. The all-new Acura ADX, crafted to match your energy. Acura, precision crafted performance.
Take your vibes and go, 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 go.
Google is a trademark of Google LLC.
Your snacking routine can get a little dull. Time for an Oikos remix or Light and Fit remix. Like a crunchy storm of sea salt praline pretzels, dark chocolate, and butter toffee, showering down into a smooth, creamy yogurt. Enjoy 6 remix varieties, 3 Epic Complete Protein Oikos remix options, or 3 craveable Light and Fit remix options. See remixyogurt.com.
Kind of as we're wrapping things up here, of course, talking Paris, I'm just curious to know if there's specific times of the year that you would recommend visiting Paris and why.
So let me start with when I don't recommend you go to Paris.
That's a great way to start it, actually.
So there's 2 months of the year that I probably would not recommend going to Paris, and that's summer months. But I understand people have their summer vacation, they have children, maybe they're teachers. So if you are going to go either July or August, go in July or go late June into early July. And the reason why is because August is just different in Paris because the Parisians take their 4 or 5 week vacation and they leave the city. And so many of the great restaurants that you might read in blogs to go to, or shops, those kind of boutique shops, those vintage shops that you want to kind of go and look at, they often close for weeks at a time. And it is in August that they do that. And so I would probably not recommend going in August if you want to have that kind of authentic experience. But there's 3 times of the year that I do really love. And that is the springtime. So, the cliche of springtime in Paris. But the reason why I do like spring in Paris is around the cherry blossom season. So, end of March into early April, the city turns pink with cherry blossoms. And it's so beautiful to kind of walk through. And you don't necessarily have to go to a park or a garden to see them. They're lining the streets as well. But it's just such a lovely time to be able to see them. It is wonderful. So in the fall, there's just something about the fall and being in Paris that, the linden trees that are everywhere just turn golden. And so the city is just all yellow and the bistros kind of just get a little bit more cozier. The heat lamps turn on and, you sit outside with a blanket on your lap. It's just a lovely, lovely time. And then I would say also to go at Christmas time. So they do have Christmas markets. And for anyone who has experienced probably Christmas markets in maybe Germany or Austria, you wouldn't go for the Christmas markets in Paris. But what Paris does really well is their decorations and their lights. So their window displays in every shop, even like a cheese shop, they are just so beautiful and elegant. The designer stores, like the fashion houses that are all in Paris, they do like elaborate, gorgeous displays in their window shops. And so I've been twice now. I just came back from Paris in December, and it was my second time going at that time. So I really do recommend those 3 times in the year.
Well, I love it. I love how each one of those times, the 3 that you mentioned, have a specific reason. And the fact that 2 of them, the first 2 were nature oriented, just to see the city, in terms of like the cherry blossoms and the other tree with the fall autumn colors. But that's really interesting. I did not know that about Paris, that they have cherries for cherry blossoms. I immediately think of March, April cherry blossoms, either Japan or Washington, D.C. So that's cool to know that Paris is actually on that list also. And I think would be an amazing place to see that.
Yeah, without the crowds.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Renee, before we wrap up, can you tell our audience a little more about the resources that you have on your site and where they can find you? Because I'm sure we have sparked some interest in slow travel.
Yeah, so my website is Dream Plan Experience, and some of the resources that I have on there are the articles, of course. So I do have slow travel articles, but I also then do have, itinerary, things to do type of articles. My blog focuses about 5 countries, actually. So it's France, Germany, Italy, Portugal, and Spain. Those are the 5 countries that I return to over and over again. That I just kind of focus on. And my articles are both slow travel experience, but it's also just for the regular traveler who's maybe never been there, but who wants to have some information. For those who really are keen about Paris or slow travel, if you become a subscriber, you can get 15 practical tips about being to kind of practice slow travel. And also I have an ebook. So I wrote an ebook about Experience Paris, finding the joy in slow travel. And so it is through all my trips of going to Paris, it is, 67 kind of hidden gem places that are locals love to visit. I love to visit, kind of mixed in with my tips about slow travel, but then also some little bit of personal stories about my time in Paris. And then I also have walking tours for 3 neighborhoods in Paris that are pretty popular that people can download and take those walking tours. And it's bringing you to different points of interest within those neighborhoods, but also sharing, well, you want to walk down this street because it's the prettiest one, or you want to stop at this restaurant or this cafe because they've got the best coffee. So I am kind of mixing it up. Here's some points of interest that you want to catch, but you also, here's how you want to walk to get to those because it's the most scenic, or it will take you to different parts of that neighborhood.
Very cool. I will definitely check those out as I dabble and consider going to Paris for that one day. That's really cool.
Yeah, I love it. And we really appreciate having you on the podcast with us today. I think it was just very informative in general, more so, of course, lots of people, including us, that go mindset, really putting people into perspective of, yes, you can enjoy a trip, taking it slow, experience it as a local, absorb it all in, and definitely Kim alluded to it earlier. We're already on that trend at our age of just being like, oh, that's where we're gearing towards. And now I feel like I'm in full slow travel gear right now.
That's awesome that I got to maybe inspire a couple of people then.
Oh, and even more who are going to be listening. Thanks so much for coming on. We really, really appreciate it, Renee.
Thanks for having me.
Bye. Thank you, Renee.
Bye.